I gave my parents a luxurious 1 week trip to Italy. When I picked them up to go to the airport, they told me they decided to go with my jobless sister instead of me. My mother smiled. Your sister needed some rest, so we decided to take her. I didn't say anything, but they had a big surprise, waiting when they landed in Italy. This happened about 6 months ago, and I'm finally ready to share because the fallout is still giving me satisfaction every single day. What started as me trying to do something incredibly generous for my parents turned into the most devastating revenge I've ever executed. Buckle up because this story has more twists than a mountain road in Tuscany. I'm 31, male, and work as a senior logistics coordinator for a major shipping company here in Denver, Colorado. Been grinding since college, currently making around $89,000 annually, which is decent money but nothing crazy. The thing is, I've been living like a complete minimalist for the past 4 years because I had this massive goal I was working toward. While most guys my age are financing trucks they can't afford or hitting expensive bars every weekend, I've been living in a basic one-bedroom apartment, driving a paid-off 2017 Toyota Camry, and my idea of entertainment is hiking Colorado trails or reading travel blogs. Every single penny I could spare went into a special savings account I'd labeled Italy Fund. See, my parents, Mike and Linda, have never been outside the United States. They're both 58 years old, worked blue-collar jobs their entire lives, and always talked about wanting to see Europe someday, but never had the money or opportunity. My dad, Mike, spent 30 years as a forklift operator at a warehouse, and my mom, Linda, worked as a school cafeteria manager. They raised me and my sister, Jessica, while living paycheck to paycheck, never taking vacations beyond weekend camping trips. But here's the thing that always broke my heart. Every Christmas and birthday, my mom would get these travel magazines from the library and spend hours looking at pictures of Italian vineyards, Roman architecture, and Tuscan countryside. She'd cut out articles about Florence and Venice and keep them in a little scrapbook. Maybe when we retire, she'd always say, but I knew their retirement savings were minimal. My dad wasn't much different. He'd watch travel shows about Italy and talk about how his grandfather came from Sicily in the 1920s. I'd love to see where the family came from, he'd say, but then he'd look at their bank account and the conversation would end. That's when I decided to make their dream come true. 4 years ago, I started planning the most incredible Italian vacation imaginable. Not some budget backpacking trip, but a legitimate luxury experience that would give them memories for the rest of their lives. I researched everything obsessively. First-class flights to Rome, five-star hotels in the most beautiful locations, private tours of the Vatican and Colosseum, wine tastings in Tuscany, gondola rides in Venice, cooking classes with actual Italian chefs, professional photography sessions so they'd have incredible pictures to show everyone back home. This wasn't some simple vacation package. I spent months learning about Italian culture, history, and cuisine so I could plan every detail perfectly. I contacted local tour guides, researched the best restaurants, even learned basic Italian phrases so I could help them navigate if needed. The total cost was going to be around $18,000 for the three of us. Flights alone were $4,500 each for first-class tickets. Hotels averaged $400 per night for premium suites. Private tours, fine dining, transportation, activities, shopping allowances. I had every detail mapped out in a comprehensive itinerary that looked like something a professional travel agent would create. I was planning to present this as their combined Christmas and 60th birthday gifts. The plan was to surprise them with the trip announcement. Then we'd go together as a family. Me, Mom, and Dad exploring Italy for 10 incredible days. Now let me tell you about my sister Jessica, who is 27 and honestly one of the most entitled, manipulative people I've ever encountered. Jessica has never held a steady job for longer than 8 months, constantly bounces between wealthy boyfriends who pay her bills, and treats our parents like her personal financial support system. Her employment history is a joke. Fired from a boutique for chronic tardiness and spending too much time taking selfies. Quit a restaurant job because standing all day was hard on my feet. Got let go from a dental office for inappropriate social media usage during work hours. Currently, she's between opportunities, which is Jessica speak for unemployed and not looking. She lives in our parents' basement rent-free, contributes nothing to household expenses, and spends her days shopping online with credit cards she can barely afford, posting thirst trap photos on Instagram, and complaining about how difficult her life is. Jessica drives a leased BMW that she can't afford, wears designer clothes bought with credit, and acts like she's some kind of influencer despite having fewer than 900 followers. She treats Mom and Dad like servants, expecting them to do her laundry, cook her meals, and give her money whenever she asks. The worst part is how our parents enable this behavior. They constantly make excuses for her. She's going through a rough patch. She just needs to find her passion. She'll figure it out eventually. Meanwhile, I've been working full-time since college, paying my own bills, building a career, and saving responsibly. After 4 years of saving and 6 months of detailed planning, I was finally ready to surprise my parents with the Italy trip. I chose Christmas morning because I wanted it to be the most memorable gift they'd ever received. I had created this beautiful presentation folder with high-quality printed itineraries, hotel brochures, restaurant menus, photos of all the places we'd visit, and even a custom map showing our route through Italy. The first-class flight confirmations were printed on expensive paper and placed in elegant holders. Christmas morning, after all the regular gifts were opened, I pulled out this large wrapped box. "Mom, Dad, I have one more gift for both of you," I said, my heart pounding with excitement. They opened it and found the presentation folder with a note on top that read, "Pack your bags. We're going to Italy. Your dream vacation is happening in 6 weeks." The reaction was everything I'd hoped for. Mom started crying immediately, Dad's jaw dropped, and they spent the next hour going through every detail of the itinerary. They kept asking if I was serious, if this was really happening, how I could afford something so incredible. "Tyler, this must have cost a fortune," Mom kept saying through tears. "How did you save up for this?" I explained my 4-year savings plan and how I'd been researching and planning every aspect of the trip. They were overwhelmed with gratitude and excitement. Dad kept talking about seeing Sicily, where his grandfather was born. Mom was already imagining herself cooking pasta with an Italian chef. "This is the most incredible gift anyone has ever given us," Dad said, hugging me tight. "I can't believe you did all this." That's when Jessica wandered downstairs to see what all the excitement was about. She'd been sleeping in until noon as usual, missing the entire Christmas morning gift exchange. "What's everyone so happy about?" she asked, still in her pajamas and looking annoyed that something was happening without her being the center of attention. "Tyler planned an amazing trip to Italy for us," Mom explained excitedly, showing her the itinerary. "Look at these hotels, these restaurants, everything!" Jessica's expression changed immediately. I watched her eyes scan the documents, and I could literally see her calculating the cost of everything. "Wow, this looks really expensive," she said slowly. "How long is the trip?" 10 days, I said. "We leave in 6 weeks." Jessica studied the itinerary more carefully, paying special attention to the hotel photos and restaurant descriptions. "This looks amazing," she said, but her tone was strange. "You guys are so lucky." Something about her reaction made me uncomfortable, but I tried to ignore it. The rest of Christmas Day was incredible, with my parents constantly thanking me and talking about how excited they were. Over the next few days, Jessica started showing unusual interest in the trip details. She'd ask questions about the flights, the hotels, the activities. She even started researching Italian culture and downloading travel apps on her phone. "I'm so excited for you guys," she kept saying, but there was something in her voice that didn't sound genuine. 2 weeks later, Jessica started making comments about how tired and stressed she'd been lately. She began talking about needing a break, needing to get away from everything, needing time to find herself. "I've been working so hard to find the right career path," she'd tell our parents, despite the fact that she hadn't applied for a single job in months. "I'm just feeling so overwhelmed and burned out." Mom and Dad, being the caring parents they are, started worrying about Jessica's mental health and stress levels. She played up the struggling daughter angle perfectly, talking about how she needed rest and recovery time. That's when she dropped her bombshell suggestion. "You know," Jessica said during dinner one night, "maybe I should come with you guys to Italy. I think the trip would be really therapeutic for me right now." Jessica's campaign to insert herself into the Italy trip was masterful manipulation. She didn't demand to come along or throw a tantrum. Instead, she played the victim angle perfectly, making our parents feel like they needed to save her. "I've just been so depressed lately," she'd tell Mom when I wasn't around. "I feel like I'm failing at everything, and I don't know what to do with my life. Maybe being in such a beautiful, inspiring place would help me figure things out." She started researching Italian culture obsessively, watching travel documentaries, learning Italian phrases on Duolingo, and constantly talking about how much the trip could mean to her personal growth and healing. "I think experiencing a different culture could really help me gain perspective on my life," she'd say. "Maybe seeing how people live in Italy would inspire me to make better choices." The manipulation was subtle but effective. Jessica positioned herself as someone who desperately needed this trip for her mental health and personal development, while making it seem like I was just going for fun. She also started asking pointed questions about the trip logistics. "How did Tyler book everything? Are the reservations transferable? Would it be possible to change the group size if needed? When I wasn't around, she'd plant seeds of doubt about whether I really understood what our parents would enjoy. I just want to make sure mom and dad have the best possible experience, she'd tell them. Maybe having another family member along would make it even more special. She also began emphasizing how much she'd learned about Italy. Did you know that the best time to visit the Sistine Chapel is early morning to avoid crowds? I've been researching tips to make sure we maximize our time there. Notice how she said we instead of you guys. She was subtly inserting herself into the trip through her language choices. The most insidious part was how she reframed my generous gift to make it sound like a family obligation, rather than something special I'd done for my parents. It's so wonderful that Tyler wants to take the whole family to Italy, she'd say, as if the trip had always been intended for everyone instead of being my specific gift to mom and dad. 3 weeks before the departure date, Jessica started having emotional breakdowns about her life situation. She'd cry to our parents about feeling lost and hopeless, needing something positive to look forward to. I just feel like I'm drowning, she'd sob to mom. Everything in my life is going wrong, and I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. I think this trip could be exactly what I need to turn things around. Our parents, being naturally caring people, started feeling guilty about going on this amazing vacation while their daughter was struggling. Jessica knew exactly how to play on their emotions. 4 days before departure, the inevitable conversation happened. I was at my parents' house helping them pack when mom sat me down for a talk. Tyler, honey, we need to discuss something about the trip. My stomach immediately dropped because I could tell from her tone that something was wrong. Jessica has been having such a hard time lately, mom began carefully. She's really struggling with depression and anxiety about her future. Dad and I have been talking, and we think maybe she should come with us to Italy. I stared at her in disbelief. Come with us? Mom, this is a trip for 3 people. Everything is booked and planned for 3 people. We know it would mean changing some reservations, Mom said. But we think Jessica really needs this right now. She's been so lost and unhappy. What about me? I asked. I planned this entire trip. I saved for 4 years to make this happen. That's when Mom dropped the bombshell that changed everything. Well, we were thinking maybe Jessica could take your place this time. You're young and successful. You'll have plenty of opportunities to travel. But Jessica needs this trip right now for her mental health. I felt like the world had stopped spinning. Take my place? This is my gift to you. I planned every detail, saved every penny, researched every location. And we're so grateful for that, Dad chimed in, having overheard the conversation. But Jessica is family too, and she's going through a really tough time. You understand, right? I understood perfectly. My sister had manipulated our parents into giving her my Italy trip, while making me look selfish if I objected. The morning of departure, I drove to my parents' house at 6 a.m. to take them to the airport. The flight was at 10:30 a.m., so we needed to be there by 8 a.m. for international check-in. I had barely slept the night before, still processing the fact that Jessica was taking my place on the trip I'd planned and paid for. Part of me kept hoping my parents would come to their senses and realize how unfair this was. Maybe they'd surprise me by saying Jessica couldn't come after all, or that they'd found a way for all 4 of us to go together. I was so naive. When I pulled into their driveway, I saw my parents on the front porch with their luggage. But I also saw Jessica coming out of the house with a large suitcase and carrying a travel purse. Morning, Tyler, Dad said as I got out of the car. Thanks for driving us to the airport. I helped load their luggage into my trunk, still hoping this was some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe Jessica was just helping carry bags, or maybe she was coming to see them off. But then Jessica climbed into the back seat of my car like she belonged there. I'm so excited, she said cheerfully. I've been packed for days. Thanks for planning such an amazing trip, Tyler. The drive to the airport was torture. Jessica talked nonstop about all the things she wanted to do in Italy, all the research she'd done, all the photos she planned to take for her Instagram account. I found this amazing restaurant in Florence that we absolutely have to try, she chattered. And I read that the best time to visit the Trevi Fountain is at sunrise when there are fewer crowds. She was talking about we as if she'd been part of the planning process from the beginning. As if this hadn't been my idea, my savings, my 4 years of preparation. Tyler, you did such a good job with the itinerary, Mom said from the passenger seat. Jessica has been studying it, and she found some additional things we might want to add. Additional things. My sister, who had contributed exactly $0 and 0 planning hours, was already trying to modify the trip I'd spent months perfecting. When we arrived at the airport, I helped them get their luggage from the trunk. The finality of the situation was hitting me hard. This was really happening. My parents were going to Italy with Jessica instead of me. Tyler, thank you so much for this incredible gift, Dad said, giving me a hug. We'll take lots of pictures to show you. Make sure you call us when you land, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Of course, sweetheart, Mom replied, hugging me goodbye. Don't be sad. You'll get to travel plenty when you're older and more established. More established? I was 31 years old with a successful career and enough savings to fund an $18,000 vacation. How much more established did I need to be? Jessica gave me a quick hug that felt completely fake. Thanks for understanding, Tyler. I know this trip is going to change my life. I watched them walk into the terminal together, my parents and my sister, heading off on the dream vacation I'd planned and paid for. Standing there in the departing flight's drop-off zone, watching them disappear through the sliding glass doors, I felt a combination of heartbreak and rage that I'd never experienced before. That's when I decided that Jessica was going to get exactly what she deserved. Here's something I hadn't told anyone. When I was planning the Italy trip, I hadn't just booked hotels and flights. I'd set up something much more elaborate as a surprise for my parents that I'd planned to reveal on the last day of the trip. See, I'd been working with a genealogy researcher in Sicily for the past 6 months, tracing my dad's family history. I'd located the actual village where his grandfather was born, found living relatives who still lived there, and arranged for a surprise family reunion that would have been the emotional climax of the entire trip. I'd also been coordinating with a local Italian filmmaker who specialized in family heritage documentaries. The plan was to film my dad, meeting his Sicilian relatives, visiting his grandfather's childhood home, and learning about his family history. It would have been an incredible surprise that would have meant everything to him. But that wasn't the only surprise I'd arranged. Through my logistics coordinator connections in the shipping industry, I'd been working with Italian customs and immigration authorities on a special project. I'd arranged for my parents to participate in a cultural exchange program that would have given them VIP treatment throughout the country and access to exclusive experiences. However, this program required specific documentation and background checks that had to be completed in advance. The participants had to be pre-approved and registered with Italian authorities using their passport numbers and personal information. Jessica's name wasn't on any of these registrations because she was never supposed to be part of the trip. But here's where it gets interesting. When you participate in certain cultural exchange programs in Italy, the authorities take participant verification very seriously. If someone shows up who isn't properly registered, or if there are discrepancies in the travel party composition, it triggers security protocols. I'd spent months setting up these special arrangements, and they were all tied to specific people: me, my mom, and my dad. Jessica's last-minute substitution was going to create some very interesting complications. The day they left, I made some phone calls. First, I contacted the genealogy researcher in Sicily and explained that there had been a change in travel plans. I told him that my dad was still coming, but with different family members, and that the surprise family reunion would need to be postponed indefinitely. I also canceled the documentary filming project. Then, I called the Italian Cultural Exchange Program coordinator and informed them that there had been an unauthorized change to our registered travel party. I explained that someone who wasn't pre-approved or background checked was attempting to participate in the program using falsified group credentials. Now, I want to be clear. I didn't lie or provide false information. Jessica genuinely wasn't authorized to participate in these programs, and her presence would create legitimate logistical and legal complications. The Cultural Exchange Program coordinator was very concerned about the security implications. "Mr. Johnson, this is quite serious," he said. "Unauthorized participation in our program could be considered a violation of our agreement with Italian immigration authorities." "I understand," I replied. "I just wanted to make sure you were aware of the situation so you could take appropriate action." I also made one more call that would prove to be the most devastating of all. The luxury hotels I'd booked weren't just regular hotel reservations. Through my professional connections, I'd arranged for my parents to stay in premium suites that were part of an exclusive corporate partnership program. These accommodations were significantly discounted because they were booked through my company's travel benefits program. However, these corporate rates required specific verification procedures. The bookings were tied to my employee ID and personal details, and any changes to the guest list had to be approved through official corporate channels. Since Jessica wasn't an authorized traveler under our corporate program, her presence would invalidate the special rates and accommodations. The hotels would be forced to either move the group to standard rooms at much higher rates or cancel the reservations entirely due to policy violations. I contacted our corporate travel department and reported that someone had fraudulently attempted to use my business travel benefits. I explained that an unauthorized person was trying to access corporate rate accommodations using my credentials. The corporate travel manager was very concerned about potential policy violations and fraud. We'll need to contact the hotels immediately to verify the guest list and ensure compliance with our partnership agreements, she said. By the time I finished making these calls, I felt a sense of calm satisfaction. Jessica wanted to steal my trip. She was about to discover that the trip she'd stolen was much more complicated than she'd realized. The first call came about 18 hours after their flight landed in Rome. It was 3 a.m. Colorado time when my phone started buzzing with an international number. Tyler? Dad's voice sounded stressed and exhausted. We're having some problems here. What kind of problems? I asked, though I had a pretty good idea what was happening. Well, when we got to the hotel, they said there was an issue with our reservation. Something about corporate verification and unauthorized guests. They moved us to much smaller rooms and said we'd have to pay a significant upgrade fee if we wanted the suites you originally booked. That's weird, I said, trying to sound surprised. What did the hotel manager say exactly? Something about the rooms being part of a business travel program that requires specific authorization. Jessica's name wasn't on the approved guest list, so they had to change our accommodations. I could hear Jessica arguing with someone in the background, her voice getting increasingly shrill. The new rooms are tiny, Dad continued, and they're charging us an extra $200 per night for the upgrade to get anything decent. Jessica is really upset about it. I'm sure you can work it out, I said. Maybe contact the hotel's corporate office in the morning. 3 hours later, Jessica called me directly, and she was furious. Tyler, what did you do? The hotel people are treating us like criminals. The rooms are horrible, and they want us to pay thousands of dollars in additional fees. I don't understand, I replied calmly. I booked everything properly. Maybe there's just some confusion with the check-in process. This is not a confusion, she screamed. They said the reservations were made through some corporate program that we're not authorized for. They keep asking for employee verification and business documentation that we don't have. That's strange, I said. Did you try explaining that you're family members of the person who made the booking? Of course I tried that. But they said the corporate policy doesn't allow substitutions without proper authorization. Tyler, you need to call them and fix this right now. Jessica, it's 3 a.m. here. I'll try to contact them during business hours, but international hotel policies can be complicated. I don't care what time it is, you need to fix this now. I hung up and went back to sleep. The next day brought a series of increasingly frantic calls and text messages. Apparently, the cultural exchange program complications were creating even bigger problems than I'd anticipated. Italian authorities had flagged their group for irregular participation in the cultural program, which triggered additional scrutiny of their travel documentation and itinerary. Tyler, they're asking us all these questions about why our group composition changed, Mom texted me. They want to know why Jessica is here instead of you, and they keep asking for documentation we don't have. The genealogy surprise in Sicily had also created confusion. The family members I'd been coordinating with were expecting to meet my dad's son, me, as part of the reunion. But Jessica kept trying to explain that she was the daughter, and I wasn't coming. Dad called to tell me that the Italian relatives are confused and disappointed. They were really excited to meet you specifically because of all the coordination work you'd been doing with the genealogy researcher. Now they don't understand why you're not here. But the worst part was the hotels and restaurant reservations. Since Jessica wasn't an authorized traveler under my corporate program, every hotel they tried to check into had issues with the booking verification. They were constantly being moved to inferior rooms, charged additional fees, or having their reservations canceled entirely. The high-end restaurants I'd booked were also problematic. Many of these establishments had special arrangements for corporate travelers and cultural exchange participants. Without proper authorization, Jessica's presence was invalidating these arrangements. We've been turned away from 3 restaurants so far, Mom called to tell me. They keep saying our group doesn't match their reservation requirements. Jessica was having a complete meltdown. Her Instagram posts from the trip were getting progressively more frustrated and angry. Day 1. Finally in Italy. Can't wait to explore. With a forced smile selfie at the airport. Day 2. Some booking issues with hotels, but nothing we can't handle. Posting from what was clearly a budget room. Day 3. Why is everything so complicated here? Just trying to enjoy the trip. No location tag, looking visibly stressed. Day 4. Seriously considering coming home early. This is not what I expected. Posted from what appeared to be a hostel. By day 5 of their Italy trip, Jessica was calling me multiple times per day, begging me to fix the problems she was experiencing. Tyler, please, you have to help us. She sobbed into the phone. Everything is going wrong. We can't get into any of the nice hotels. The restaurants keep turning us away, And these Italian officials keep asking questions we can't answer. What kind of questions? I asked innocently. They want to know about your corporate travel program. They want documentation about the cultural exchange thing. They keep asking why our group changed. I don't know how to answer any of this stuff because you're the one who set everything up. Jessica, I planned that trip for me and our parents. You decided to take my place, remember? I can't really help with documentation I don't have access to anymore. What do you mean you don't have access? You're the one who booked everything. Yes, but the bookings were made through my work programs and personal credentials. When you substituted yourself for me, you essentially invalidated all those arrangements. There was a long silence on the phone as the reality of the situation sank in. Are you saying this is my fault? She asked, her voice getting dangerous. I'm saying that taking someone else's place on a trip they planned and paid for has consequences you didn't consider. Tyler, you need to call these hotels and restaurants and fix this right now. Jessica, even if I wanted to help, most of these bookings can't be changed remotely. The corporate travel agreements require the authorized traveler to be physically present for verification. Since I'm not there, there's nothing I can do. She started screaming at me through the phone. This is ridiculous. You're being petty and vindictive. Our parents are suffering because of your selfishness. Our parents are suffering because you manipulated them into giving you a trip you weren't prepared for, I replied calmly. You wanted my vacation, Jessica. Now you get to deal with all the complications that come with it. By day 6, the situation had deteriorated completely. They'd been kicked out of 2 hotels for documentation issues. The cultural exchange program had been suspended for their group due to irregular participation. Most of their restaurant reservations had been canceled. Mom called me crying. Tyler, this trip has been a disaster. Nothing is working the way it was supposed to. We're staying in budget hotels, eating at tourist trap restaurants, and Jessica has been fighting with everyone. What do you mean fighting with everyone? She keeps yelling at hotel staff, restaurant managers, tour guides. She's demanding they honor the original reservations, even though we can't provide the required documentation. It's so embarrassing. I'm sorry it's not going well, Mom. Tyler, is there any way you could fly over here and help us sort this out? Having you here might resolve some of these documentation issues. And there it was. They wanted me to spend another $2,500 on a last-minute flight to Italy to clean up the mess Jessica had created by stealing my trip. Mom, I can't just drop everything and fly to Italy. I have work commitments, and honestly, I don't think my presence would solve the underlying problems. But Tyler, we're your parents. Don't you want to help us? I wanted to help you by planning an incredible vacation that we could enjoy together. You chose to give my spot to Jessica instead. Now you're asking me to spend more money and time to fix the problems that decision created. That evening, Jessica sent me a series of increasingly desperate text messages. Tyler, please help us. This trip is ruined. I know I messed up by taking your place, but Mom and Dad don't deserve this. Can you at least call the hotels and explain the situation? I'm begging you. I'll do anything to make this right. I'll pay you back for the trip somehow. Please don't let Mom and Dad's dream vacation be destroyed because of me. The next morning, I got a call from Dad. Son, Jessica told us what really happened. She explained that she manipulated us into letting her come instead of you, and that all these problems are happening because the trip was specifically set up for you. Dad, No, let me finish. We're ashamed of how we treated you. You worked for 4 years to give us this incredible gift, and we let Jessica guilt us into excluding you from your own generosity. I just wanted you and Mom to see Italy, I said. We know, and we're so sorry. Tyler, is there any way to fix this? Can you help us salvage the rest of the trip? I thought about it for a moment. They were my parents, and despite everything, I loved them. Dad, I can try to contact some of the vendors and explain the situation, but honestly, most of these arrangements can't be fixed remotely. The damage is already done. We understand. Tyler, when we get home, we want to make this right. Jessica needs to face consequences for what she did, and we need to find a way to properly thank you for your generosity. The rest of their trip was a budget disaster. They ended up staying in hostels and eating at cheap tourist restaurants. Jessica's Instagram went completely silent after day 6. The cultural exchange program was canceled. The family reunion in Sicily never happened. When they finally returned to Denver, Jessica looked defeated and exhausted. My parents looked disappointed and embarrassed. Tyler, Mom said when they got back, we owe you the biggest apology of our lives. We let Jessica manipulate us into betraying your incredible generosity, and we'll never forgive ourselves for that. We've learned our lesson about Jessica's manipulations, Dad added. She's not welcome in our house anymore until she pays you back for this trip and proves she's changed. Jessica tried to protest, but they were firm. You stole your brother's gift to us, Mom told her. You turned his generous gesture into a disaster through your selfishness and entitlement. You need to make this right. 6 months later, Jessica is working at a call center, slowly paying me back for the Italy trip. She lives in a cheap apartment and drives a used Honda because she can't afford her previous lifestyle. My parents and I are planning another Italy trip for next year, just the three of us this time, with even better arrangements than before. And Jessica? She's permanently uninvited from all family vacations going forward. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting people face the natural consequences of their actions while you watch from a safe distance.